Good morning, dearest friends. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our journey through the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Presently, we are studying Tractate Masechet Shabbat, the 14th chapter, Shemona Shratzim, and we are on 101b, soon to be on 110b, soon to be 111a. We are in a segment that's gone on for a few days now about remedies, healing, and Talmud era pharmaceutical and medical best practices. It's introduced, actually, the introduction is quite reasonable and sensible because, again, we're talking about Shabbos, but on Shabbos there are certain rabbinic restrictions about medical remedies on Shabbos. The reason behind it was a gzeira to avoid grinding, crushing, and pulverizing some of the ingredients, which are, and that's one of the necessary steps for many medicines in ancient times. And I suppose our pharmacists here would confirm that even to this day, there is a degree of crushing necessary for certain medications or mixes or flavors or whatever. And so that is prohibited when a person is not in dire need. Where it gets a little more complicated is there are certain, especially in the ancient world, there were certain remedies, certain items, drinks, foods that had dual purpose. It could be used as a seasoning, and it could be taken for its medical and remedy benefits. The truth is, I think to this day, chicken soup is one of the most prescribed remedies for all different kinds of illnesses. I see Alan is shaking his head. Beryl, if you're shaking your head, I cannot see it. And although Alan's pharmacy never sold chicken soup, but it is certainly something that has been advised. I suppose our physicians may, and those in the medical field may have done the same. And anyone with a bubby, or anyone who is a bubby or was a bubby, has suggested the absolute critical importance of chicken soup. And so that's an example of something that is eaten. You might take it also because you're not feeling well, but it is a food. But there are other things that are a little more on the fence. Say taking raw cumin, is it cumin? There's some spices that certain people say to take in a drink or whatever, that you probably wouldn't find yourself having those quantities if not for the medicinal remedy value. And there are other instances as well.
Salt, basically salt.
So our discussion started out with salt, because are you allowed to make salt on Shabbos? But that was about pickling. But it also touches and comes into our sugya as well. And we've spoken about other remedies. And from that discussion, the Mishnah ends up quoting a certain item that's taken for snake bites. And that took us on a long journey through all different kinds of potential hazards and encounters with snakes. We got a little bit into snake psychology, about and how to hopefully cause the snake to be less interested or less aware of your presence. And we moved past that, and we actually, I believe, we didn't hit a Mishnah yet. We're in the final, analyzing the final item mentioned in our Mishnah, which was Kais Ikarim, a potion of sterility. And we're going to talk about what causes or what kind of things a person might take that would cause them to be sterile. There were other medical treatments, a person that didn't want to be sterile. We're going to talk about the halachas of, is it permissible to cause a human being, oneself or another person, to become sterile? So again, another interesting topic that's possibly a little bit off the imagined Shabbos path. But of course, I think you'll find it interesting. And then we'll move on to other remedies and other discussions. And ultimately, with Hashem's help, today we'll go all the way to a Mishnah, which will have a new chapter in our insight. Not today, but we'll have it in shooting sight within our lenses. We'll be able to see the next chapter, chapter 15. So I'm going to share the screen. And of course, we dedicate our learning for the dear members of our Chapura, their families, for health, happiness, wellness, and all good brachas. And mentioning Malka Bas Rivka, Leah Bas Rita, and I also want to mention a dear friend who's having a medical procedure tomorrow. So I want to dedicate today's learning for Alexander Ben Irina, for a refuah shlema ukreva. Only good news for him and for all of us and for all of Klal Yisrael. And of course, we shouldn't forget there are folks who are still in rough circumstances out in the former Soviet Union area, including many of our brothers and sisters. And of course, we pray for their wellness, literally. So that is that. Here we go. So our Mishnah mentions, and the truth is we should check, we should peek at our Mishnah for a moment, just to be refreshed. Here is our Mishnah. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, here. Drink all drinks. You're not allowed to drink meidekalim and kosi karim. And that was actually the end of the discussion yesterday, which I failed to give in our recap, which was that kos ikarim. We talked about, is it either kos dekalim, was that a drink that came from the palm trees? Was that a drink that helped puncture and combat illness? And we talked about the laxative effect of certain beverages, and particularly Babylonian beer. So I didn't include that in my recap, but now we're on to talk about kos ikarim, which a person should not drink on Shabbos. That's essentially what the Mishnah says, and that's what we're going to be discussing here. Kos ikarim. So the Gemara says, hang on, let's define umay kos ikarim. We know you cannot drink it on Shabbos, but what is it? Is it Coca-Cola? Something else? So Rav Yochanan shares the recipe. Lysi Maskal Zuza Kuma Alexandria. Bring a zuz weight, right? Maskal is like mishkal. Bring the weight of a zuz of Alexandrian kuma. Rashi Sarafi Lanot Shel Alexandria. We're talking about sap, which had a gummy consistency. Is that what we're saying? Or the gum of the Alexandrian Alexandria. Umiskal Zuza Gavia Gila, and a zuz of alum. Pharmacists, you're muted. Help me out. What's alum? Alem. Well, Google, Alan, you're muted, but just confirm if Google is telling us accurate information. It is a chemical compound, colorless, astringent. It's used medically and in dyeing and tanning. Alan, help me out. Do you know this?
It's also used in when you shave and you cut yourself. There's an alum stick that you use that stops bleeding.
Fascinating. What is alum for? Google says.
As far as we use it, it's strictly for stopping a bleeding problem.
Interesting. So it's found possibly in baking powder. Does that make sense?
I never heard of that.
All right. So you take a weight of a zuz of Alexandrian gum, a weight of a zuz of alum, and miskel zuza kurkuma rishka, and a weight of a zuz of garden saffron, Rashi karkum shalgan. It grows in the garden. So you have these three ingredients. Vilish chakinu bahadi adadi, and they are ground together. So first of all, we have evidence of pharmacy or medicines being pulverized and ground together. And this is kos ikarim. Let me just look at Google for a moment. Alexandrian gum. That's not a thing apparently. Alexandrian, what would the other Alexandrian gum. All right, sap from the Alexander tree, trees of Alexander. Now this is kos ikarim. Lizava, So this apparently, if a person drinks this compound, it could cause a person to become sterile. Now, lizava, if this is to treat a zava, a woman that has a uncommon, what's the word? Discharge that was associated with a illness and also had halachic implications. So tilasa b'chamra, if you mix in a third portion of wine, below miyakra, it no longer causes a person to become sterile. Rashi, so a zava who has this a health condition which included in it is a discharge, but I imagine there are other internal problems that were probably more alarming than the simple halachic matter. Well, then you could mix in the wine, and the wine, Rashi says, dilutes the impact of the other ingredients to the point where it will heal, but wouldn't cause the person to become sterile. And one thing I do know is that medicines, and I think our pharmacists will confirm this, when taken in the right proportions can have a healing effect. But when too much or too little, it could have either no effect or an adverse effect. And so here the Gemara is reminding us that with the proper balancing act, it could heal without causing a person to become sterile. Now, if a person wants to become sterile, that might be the objective, but if they don't want to, that would probably be considered an undesirable side effect. Liarokna. Now, if you are treating Yarokna, which we said was jaundice, even though Yarok is green, and we usually associate jaundice with being yellow, but maybe actually I think there's a discussion, Dr. Stalmer, you'll help me out, if some of the colors in Hebrew have a broader spectrum than the way they are used in English. And so it's possible that Yarok, right, because Yarok and green and yellow eventually blur the line. So the question is, well, anyway, so Yarokna here means jaundice. So train b'shichra, you mix in so here Rashi says Minayu lishti b'shichra v'zer fasei. 2 of the 3 ingredients should be mixed into beer, umiyakar, and actually then it would cause a person to become sterile, but it would also heal their jaundice. L'zava tlasa b'chamra v'lemiyakra, and for a zava, if you mix it in all 3 into wine, v'lemiyakra, they don't become sterile. So I guess we have 2 different ways of mixing this. I'm sorry, no, I read Zavat, loss of a chamer b'lemiyakra. We just said that if you mix all 3 ingredients with wine, it helps a zava be cured, and it doesn't cause them to be sterile. Is the word sterile a word that can be used for male and female? Or is the word barren, or is that just a yeshiva language?
Sterile could be used for women.
Okay, fine. Shkoyach. All right, so anyways, we're talking about, but it's obvious that what we're talking about here is an ingredient that affects the female reproductive system, just by the context and what we're talking about. So the Gemara says, V'iloi, what happens if you take this drink? Or you don't have this drink? You don't have kosi karim. And we're dealing with a zava that needs healing. So what do? Laisi tulasa kapize shamchi parsoi. You bring a large vessel that has in it shamchi bitzalim, large Persian onions. Vinishlok bechamra, boil them in water. Vinashkia, and she should drink it.
Wine.
So, what did I say?
Water.
Yeah, wine. I'm sorry. Chamra's wine. Vinashkia, drink it. Vinemola, and tell her, ku mizovich. Stop. Let your flow cease. Let this discharge stop. Now, I don't know if telling a person that their body should stop doing a bodily function is particularly effective in modern medicine. So I don't know if this is part of the prescription or an assurance that drink it, it's gross, let's say, but drink it because this will help you be cured of your affliction. So I don't know if this is more of a, I don't know.
A discharge in a woman could be menstruation,
It could be menstruation, but here
or
we're
it could be an infection, a vaginal infection.
right. So here we're distinctly not describing a typical menstruation. We're talking about some kind of flow that's undesirable and not typical. I'm overgeneralizing because in truth, the sugya of zava and nida, which are two different female conditions, which are also associated with the laws of ritual impurity. But for the purposes of this Gemara, it's clear that we're talking about a medical condition that needs treatment. That's not the regular nida, or at least that's what I understand here.
Did anybody ever put out a booklet or a book of Talmudic remedies?
I'm sorry, doctor?
Did anybody ever put out a book of Talmudic remedies?
There are certainly scholarly works analyzing and exploring these remedies. But the title of that book should probably be "Don't Try This at Home." Again, and I'm not saying that to be cynical. This is the halachic and rabbinic tradition that these remedies are no longer intended to be taken as they are, and yet we study them because they are Torah, and particularly our sugya here, there are halachically applicable and relevant matters, and also, some of these things may work, but certainly this should not be your source for practical applied medicine. Dr. Stamler, I'm certain with your Googling prowess, within a few minutes, you'll find us that book. And I'm not going to tell you if you should purchase it for your library, but probably a secondhand website will do better than buying these from the original, how do you call it? All right, let's see. So the Gemara says, V'iloi, what if your Persian onion concoction doesn't work? So now we're going to give another remedy, which is a little bit more esoteric, spiritual, or not quite as in the realm of medicine. V'loi, loisva prashas drachim, advise her to sit at a crossroad. V'lankita kasa dechamra biyada, and she should hold some wine in her hand. V'laisi inish me'achora v'livata, and someone should come from behind her and startle her. V'leimala kum mi zovayich, stop with the flow. Rashi, yivatna bli diyata pitom, startle her, scare her. Not because you want to be mean, but because this is a tried and proven way to help a person be rid of this condition. Rebero?
It would be interesting to see how the Rambam handles this kind of stuff.
Well, I'm not sure if a rabbi is doing this or if a doctor is doing this.
No, I'm saying the Rambam.
Rambam. The Rambam, I'll have to find it for you. The Rambam discusses this, and the Rambam has his own medical guide. I don't think the Rambam. One of the famous texts on the subject of Talmudic medicine is the Rambam's son, Avram ben Rambam, but I have to upload and remind myself what his distinct opinion is. I believe it is his opinion that this is an expression of the medical tradition of the time, and I think he actually gives the least halachic weight to these remedies. Now, if I recall correctly, the Rambam's son was also a doctor. Was he? He for sure was a Nagid. He for sure was a Torah leader of the Jewish Egyptian community. I just don't recall if he actually was a physician as well. Anyway, we can look it up, but not right now because I don't want to get too distracted. I'm still curious to know if there are any other remedies to help a person be healed of Zav. So, doctors here, Dr. Hammer, is there any medical treatment that you're aware of that scaring the individual is helpful?
Supposedly for hiccups.
Oh, doctor, you're muted, so I don't hear you, but your smile tells us a lot.
Well, you know that if a parent yells loud enough at a child, that usually has an effect. I'm not sure if it's the effect that's intended. But
What about shock therapy?
Now, I will say this. I do understand that many different environmental and emotional stimuli can possibly influence and affect a person's cycle.
right.
Now, again, I already told you that this is not quite related to the cycle, but I have no idea if scaring a person is a good idea without their knowledge, especially in states where hit and carry is legal with or without a license. You want to be very careful about scaring people and jumping on back of them. Now, I don't know how you're going to get the person to stand in the road with a cup of wine, and but okay, I guess you'll figure that out. The
By
Eli
the way, Rav Avram ben Rambam was a physician too.
was a physician, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
court physician.
Family business.
He had
Rabbi,
some. Yes,
what year are we talking about here?
Talmud,
What century?
200 to 500 approximately.
Because Rambam was in the 1100s, isn't it?
Yeah, the Rambam lived good 600
Another
years.
era. To
I'm
another
sorry,
era.
it was a different era, correct? The Rambam did a work of codifying the halachic conclusions of the Talmud into a work that was be more accessible for people that don't have time studying the entire Talmud.
Right.
The Rambam also ironically writes that with my work, you don't need any other work. You just need to study the Torah, and then you can study the Rambam, and you'll know Jewish practice. And no further works will be necessary to elucidate and clarify Jewish practice. The irony is that the Rambam remains today one of the most common, the book and work that has the most scholarly and yeshiva and Talmudic, not Talmudic, rabbinic commentary. And one of actually the areas that Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, who just passed away, was renowned for was his scholarly works and study of the Rambam, because the Rambam didn't provide footnotes or citations. And so one of the great scholarly exercises are to find the source for the Rambam's halacha. And now we know much of the Rambam's halacha is clearly and immediately hedged to the Talmud, because many times we study the Gemara and we open up the Rambam's work, Mishnah Torah, and we can say, wow, that's exactly the Rambam's source. And even more so, we can infer how the Rambam understood the Talmud. But if you study the entire Mishnah Torah, you'll find areas that are not immediately tied to the Talmud. And so you have to be a scholar of the Babylonian Talmud, the Yerushalmi Talmud, many other halachic Gaonic works, and you have to really know a lot and also understand how the Rambam studies. And you have to really be brilliant, especially Rabbi Kanievsky worked without a computer and did his scholarship before they had the computer databases and search capacity. So anyways,
Rabbi,
yes, Rabbi.
as much as there is study of the Rambam or the Nevuchim, etc., in schools of philosophy, he's a major philosopher with many people studying it just from that point of view, the philosopher king, etc., etc.
This is certainly so.
By the way, kosher kingdom is out of Persian onions. They haven't had them for 500 years, but they'll order it for the chabura. They say, don't worry.
Eloi, if the scaring doesn't work, Laisi buna de chamuna, ubuna de morika, bring a buna worth of cumin and a buna of saffron, ubuna de shablilta, and a buna. Here, let's see Rashi. Rashi says that buna is milo egrof, is a handful. So you get a handful of cumin, a handful of saffron, a handful of fenugreek, vinishlag b'chamra, cook it all in wine, vinashkia, give it to drink, v'nemole kumi zivayach, and tell her this should be a healing for your ziva, your zov. V'iloi, if that doesn't work, laisi shitin shi'e didana, bring 60 clay seals that are used for barrels. Rashi, megofet chavit, the plugs for barrels. Ve lishpaya, rub them on her. V'neimala kumi zuvayich, stop with your flow. How is that going to work? So again, these are remedies that are not purely medical. They belong, I believe, more in the genre of segula, which is not an evident and immediate association. Rashi explains, how do you smear dry clay seals on a person? So he says, they should be reconstituted and they should become back muddy or clay with water so that they actually could be smeared. And so according to Rashi's pshat, maybe there was some kind of medical value to wine soaked clay and water, but I don't suppose any of our pharmacists here could draw our attention to such a remedy in the modern era. The Eloi, if that doesn't work, Lysi Pashtina, bring an herb called Pashtina. V'lishlok bechamra, cook it in wine. V'lishpaya, and smear it as well. V'neimala kumi zevayich. What exactly is this herb? Where's Rashi? It's a kind of grass or herb that doesn't grow upwards, but it grows outwards. V'iloi, and if this doesn't work, Lysi charnuga dehikta rumita. Bring a charnuga that comes from the romisa plant. What is charnuga? It's an herb that grows near a thorn bush, because the word romisa is a thorn bush. Velikle, burn them. Lisba b'shachki the kitana b'kaita, and take the ashes and put it in linen shmatas from the summer, and v'shachki the amar gufna b'svasa, or you could do it in cotton rags if this is the winter time. Rashi, let's see some Rashis. So you should put it in garments, summer garments made out of linen, or winter garments made out of cotton. And what do you do with them? Now that you've got all of this stuff, I don't know. It doesn't say what to do with them. Maybe she's wearing these garments. I guess that's going to have to be what's going on over here. All right, we're not done. We have more remedies here, all for this ziva. V'iloi lichrei shiva biri. Dig 7 gumais. Dig 7 ditches. V'likli b'hu shavishta the arla, and burn. Shavishta the arla zmayr shalkar milada. Fresh, new, young grape vines that are still arla. Because what is arla? Arla is the first 3 years of a plant's life. They cannot be consumed. It is prohibited to be eaten. So what you do is you dig holes, you burn in them these vines. And she should hold a cup of wine in her hand. And she should go from one, standing near one hole, and she should sit by the other. Rashi malgumazu yeshivu alzu v'al kol amida name alei kum yizir. So she should be bopping or bouncing or moving from one hole, one ditch to the other, and as she goes from one step to the other, akol chada v'chada leimalei, in each step of this trip, kum yizivayich, tell her stop with your flow. V'iloin, if that doesn't work, Lysi smida, bring some smida Rashi, kemach soiles, very fine flour, v'leischa mipalga l'satoyi, and smear it on the lower half of her body, v'leimale kumi zivayich, and pronounce stop with the ziva. V'lo laisi biasa dinamisa, and if that doesn't work, bring an egg of a na'amisa, Rashi, bas hayana. See, everything's connected. Last week's parsha, we read about the different birds that are unkosher, and one of them we said was a ya'ana. So what's a bas hayana? Actually, let's see if Rashi. No. Dr. Stalmer, have you ever seen a bat yana?
Yeah, that's an ostrich.
An ostrich. Oh. In
Today,
modern
bat
Hebrew?
Today, bat yana is an ostrich. Then I
A
don't know
yana in
what-
modern Hebrew, very interesting. You see, it's good to have. Hold on, now we got to find our place again. Pardon me, folks. We're almost there. Here. Take an ostrich egg, vilikli, and scramble it, burn it, cook it. Rashi. Velispa b'shachki de kisna b'kaito v'shachki de amar gufna b'stava. And you take this egg and burn it and collect the ashes in the winter, like we said before, with in the winter linen here. In the summer with linen, and in the sun in the winter with garments made of amar, made out of wool. If that doesn't work, liftach lachavisa the chamer lishma, open a barrel of wine special in her honor. What does that mean? Well, if you'd ask me, I'd say that sounds like you should make a kiddush and everyone should enjoy the wine, but I don't think that's what we're saying. Rashi, he should be drinking a lot of wine. The Eli linkit sarta the mishtacha bechapusa the chadana bechudanya chivarta, and if that doesn't work, take say arta barley the mishtacha that is found bechfusa the chudnaya chavirta. Take soirim. Soira hanimsas beglile prodalavana. This is barley found in the dung of a white mule. And what do you do with it? Inakta chad yama. If she holds it in her hand one day, Rashi. Inakta lab yada chad yama. There will be 2 days of reprieve. If she holds it for 2 days, there'll be 3 days of reprieve. But if she holds this barley that's been marinating in the dung of a white mule, well, then she'll be forever done of this malady, of this illness. Yes, Reb Beryl.
Aren't they giving us a subtle message that this stuff is not too effective? Try this. If it doesn't work, try that, try the other.
I am not a pharmacist nor a student of medicine, but I suppose there are certain issues, especially that there are symptoms that may have many different causes. So you have a headache, take Tylenol. And if that doesn't work, try this. And if that doesn't work, try that. So I'm sure there are certain maladies that have many different solutions, but possibly this was an elusive and highly complicated issue to heal.
One more question. When we were talking about amulets, we were warned to be sure to go to somebody who knows what he's doing.
Who, the Gemara warns?
In all of these things, there is absolutely no mention of go to somebody who has success, who has experience.
Well, Reb Beryl, how much training do you need to pick barley out of a mule's dung? No, no, you're asking a good question. I just,
No, it's,
Um,
it's okay. It's okay. I wasn't headed that way. Don't worry.
So I suppose when it comes to an amulet, which is really a matter of tradition and names, and there's a totally esoteric, mystical side to it. So the Gemara didn't say beware of amateurs. The Gemara says we're not going to allow you to desecrate Shabbos because some Meshugana sitting in, I don't know, in a basement in Ukraine is copying and writing words and selling them on the internet. To be Michal Shabbos, you have to go to you can only do it if it is an expert. And what did expert mean? Either the healer has a track record of healing, or the specific amulet maybe has a track record of actually being effective. Here, we're not talking about carrying or doing on Shabbos. Here, we're just having a discussion about medicine of that era. Most likely, the people that were practitioners, if there were, they probably were doctors. But here, it sounds like more of a process of curiosity, or maybe many rabbis who would travel around would go to villages where there were no doctors, and so you wanted to know at least the basics. So I don't know. It's an interesting question. You know, any lay person could get their hands on a medical book or on a book, a pharmaceutical textbook, but the textbook alone probably doesn't make you qualified to actually prepare medicine, because there's a lot more background that is needed. So it's quite possible that all the information we have here is just a tip of the iceberg, or replace that phrase with anything else that matches our Gemara. But so it's an interesting question. But again, Rebel, the name of the book that we're going to make on this is "Don't Try This." Don't try this at home. And let's be honest.
Or in shul.
Please don't try this in shul either.
Okay.
All right, so this concludes a lengthy, very lengthy. I didn't even realize how long it would take us to get through this. A lengthy discussion about different Talmud era remedies, treatments for a Zava who is having trouble being healed from this particular issue of an unstopping flow. We have over here a large number of different remedies. I don't know if the chronology here is of easy accessibility or effectiveness. I'm not sure exactly. What I can say is that the final ones seem to be more segula oriented, meaning we could research the medical and effects of gum and alum and saffron, and I bet you will find that there are at least some medical properties that are still used to this day. Then as we go down this list, we seem to be veering further and further away from the literal medicine and more into the segula or metaphysical kind of stuff. And that concludes our segment on medical treatments for Zava. A lot of burning, a lot of wine involved. There we go. Now the Gemara continues. Yeah, Reb Allen?
It's amazing that in this day and age, we might use the same ingredients, but we just extract the main ingredient in that product and make it into a pill or a cream.
Interesting. So, for example, barley, does barley have some kind of medicinal value?
No.
We have wheat germ oil.
No.
And I don't know about mule dung. Anyways, okay. But in truth, Dr. Stamler, I think we will find, I don't have over here, but we can find works that explore.
I'm sure that was actually the crux of my question, because I'm sure some people did a study and took all these.
Yeah, I'm sure there are there's scholarly works contrasting both these remedies to other contemporaneous, the same era, medicine. And additionally, comparing it to contemporary medicine, and there's no doubt that some of these remedies do reflect a certain medical reality, or the how do you call it, the effective ingredient or the compounds that exist within some of these medicines.
Rabbi, I would imagine that the way these remedies got into the Talmud is they must have worked somewhere for someone.
Yeah. So as I gave a few days ago an overview, there's different rabbinic traditions about exactly what's going on in the Gemara. Are we simply recording medicine of the era, or was there a Talmudic tradition? Do these date back to more ancient times and have a more? But more or less everyone agrees that these aren't meant to be applied practically. And we're talking about for 1,000 years, our sages have been telling us this is not meant to be a medical guidebook. So anyways, but we're not done. We're almost done, but we're not done yet with medicine. Liarokna train bi shichra. We said previously in the Gemara that if a person has jaundice, they should take the medicine called kos ikarim, the medicine that causes sterility, and mix it with water. Take 2 of the ingredients, mix it with wine, umiakar, and it will cure the jaundice, but it will also cause the person to be sterile.
The only problem I have with that, when you have jaundice, actually it affects the liver. And if you have an issue with your liver and you take alcohol, it makes the liver even worse.
So you're saying jaundice and then more alcohol is not a good idea. All right. All the more.
I would like to know how they diagnosed it. Some people just have that color skin naturally.
Well, if a person had normal, healthy skin and all of a sudden they took they had a change in color, I think the first thing we probably assume is that maybe there was something with the liver.
Or they went to Florida.
Yeah. All right. So
they become yellow. They don't become tanned.
Right.
They look thickly yellow. And, taking alcohol with it, alcohol causes cirrhosis. So that's a double.
Yeah, so that's what Dr. Stamler is saying. Don't drink.
Yeah, it's a double whammy.
So let's see the Gemara. V'iloi, if your combination of beer and the ingredients don't help your jaundice. Laisi reisha de shibuta de milcha v'lishlok b'shifra. Then what you should do is get a fish head called shibuta. Which kind of fish is that? I don't know, kind of fish. And boil it in beer. Alan, if you cook beer, does it lose its alcohol? Does the alcohol boil out?
I don't know. I've never cooked it. I've never even heard of it.
So if you have some beer battered fish head.
I would say it probably does cook the alcohol out.
You're talking about beer mevushal.
Yeah. So if your initial treatment doesn't help or you don't have it, take a shibuta fish head. It's a salted shibuta head. Boil it in beer, velishte, and drink that juice. If that doesn't help or you don't have it, lysi, monine de kamsi. Bring grasshopper juice. Not beetle juice. Grasshopper juice, and drink it. V'ileka monine de kamsi. If you don't get your hands on some grasshopper juice, Rashi, tzir chagavim. It's the brine in which grasshoppers were pickled. So you'll notice that there's a need for salt and other kinds of critters. If that doesn't work, you can bring juice of a nikiri, which Rashi says is min oifes ktanim. So you have these little pickled little birds. And you should take this person into the bathhouse and smear the juice on them. And if you don't have the juice of this bird, lukme bein tanura leguda, he should stand between. If there is no bathhouse, then he should be smeared while standing between tanura leguda between an oven and the wall. So it sounds like there is a need for heat.
Rabbi,
Yes.
if we feel too confident how much smarter we are today, I can tell you there's a product called Prevagen selling in the hundreds of millions of dollars based on jellyfish, and the chemist in Montreal who writes a column says total nonsense. And that's today with the Chachamim.
And what do you say?
I agree that it's nonsense. It's supposed to cure Alzheimer's, everything.
The question is, does it work?
Obviously, it works for the manufacturer. I can tell you that.
You're saying they're doing good.
Oh, major.
I just Googled Prevagen, and one of the articles in the Washington Post is that there was a court case about the effectiveness of Prevagen as a memory.
Is it a din Torah or a court case?
A court case. Washington Post, September 11th, 2021.
You can bring him to the Varo year and say it doesn't jive with what we're told here. It's not a shabuda.
Interesting. So anyways, Rashi makes that point. I'm sorry, just to go back. So you should smear them with the juice of the brine of a bird or a grasshopper or whatever. And it has to be in a place that's very hot. So you take the person to the sauna. If you don't have that, at least stand between the oven and the door. Rashi says, because the sweat helps the person break and be cleansed of this illness. Rabbi Yochanan comments on a medical need for to sweat and to be hot. A person really wants to be hot, to sweat. Wrap the person up in a blanket. Rashi. Oh, wrap a person in another patient's sheet.
Oh.
Rashi, right? Maybe the person that already was very hot, so they're going to heat up the sheet. I don't understand how that works, but I understand enough to know that I don't understand anything about this Gemara, and so we'll take the Gemara's word for it. Let's see if Rabbi Steinsaltz has anything to add over here.
You have to scroll a little lower.
Hold on. One who seeks to warm this patient up, wrap him tightly in his sheet, and then Rashi is the one that says in another patient's sheet. And now the Gemara has testimony. Rav Acha bar Yosef chash bey. Rav Acha bar Yosef, one of the sages of the Talmud, once was, I guess, stricken with jaundice. Avad le Rav Kana. Rav Kana did the above mentioned remedy, wrapping him in a sheet, vitasi, and then he became all better. Refuah zu shel sadin. So Rav Kahana performed this medical process. Now, I don't remember. Did we say that Rav Kahana was a physician? I think we may have said that. Let's look. Well, as you notice, there are a lot of Rav Kahanas. I'm thinking about the Rav Kahana who studied under Shmuel. All right. Eli, we're not done. If the jaundice patient isn't healed from the kosi karim with wine, and they aren't healed with this brine being smeared on him or being wrapped in the blanket of another patient, according to Rashi's Pshat. Laise tlosa kapizi de tamri parsiasa. Bring 3 vessels full of Persian tamarim. Utlosa kapizi de kira dinishrufi. And 3 vessels of Rashi, Shaiva, Hatsofa v'noitefes mikaveres shenismalim oidefes. 3 vessels of wax that dripped when a pot overflowed. What would the point of that be? Oh, we're talking about beeswax. Utlasa kepize ahala tulana. And 3 vessels of aloe. Remember, we had aloe before. 3 things of aloe. That is tolana, which is adom, red aloe. Boil it in beer, and drink it. So you have the Persian dates, wax, red aloe in beer, and do that. Eloi, if that doesn't help, Laisi Ila Bar Chamra, you should take a baby donkey, Iyar Ben Atonot, an Iyar, which is a donkey, right? By the way, there is, and what's it called? Winnie the Pooh, right? The cartoon Winnie the Pooh. So isn't there a friend Eeyore? And Eeyore is a donkey. See, Ribeiro, we bring big, deep scholarship.
I don't. My kids are too old for me to remember that.
But when they were kids, they would remember. They probably read Winnie the Pooh.
I'm sure.
So we bring a lot of. Anyways, okay, I think we're gonna stop over here. I see we already lost a few of our members. It's already 11:01.
Rabbi, I think that what we're getting here for me is a very, very positive message about Judaism. You know, Ad Hayom Hazeh, you have the witnesses who don't go to doctors, don't allow blood transfusions. They say you have to wait for God to cure you. And here we see that the message is something is wrong, do something. Don't sit back and just say Tehillim. I think it's a very interesting message.
Beryl, as we say, afdem is vert the ganze. We spent an hour learning the Talmud. We didn't have as much comprehension maybe as other days, but for your comment here, I think the whole conversation was worthwhile. I'll agree with you. The Talmud is encouraging intervention. And the Gemara says to go to the cutting edge of contemporary medicine. And in those days, this was cutting edge, I suppose. And also, as a side note, we have a great degree of insight into, I don't know what, but stuff that was around and the maladies that were around and the ways things people might have done to try to get better and to heal themselves. And so certainly an interesting conversation. And I want to thank you all for your indulgence.
There's no opinion that says stay and do nothing. Nowhere. Not
that we've seen here. So tomorrow we're going to literally do a few more lines of this, and then we're going to get into the sugya of the halachic permissibility of certain more scientifically quantifiable medical practices. And so anyway, stay tuned. Thank you for being here for today. I want to thank all of our experts for weighing in and keeping us informed and educated. And Hashem shall bless everyone with good health. We shouldn't have to be dealing with donkey dung or aloe, red aloe, or any of these things, because we shall be blessed with perfect health and good circumstances. Hope to see everybody tomorrow with good health and a smile. Hopefully everyone will keep on smiling. Thanks.